I wanted to be able to, write the check and have someone else that I know, like, and trust go and take care of the asset, take care of the things, and they send me a check back. And I don't really have to do very much. I have to do a lot to vet all of the providers, all of the people that I partner with. But once that's done and I figure out that I know, like, and trust them, and you vet the deal, then it's really kind of hands off at that point. It's not as much, you're kind of managing stuff, but it's not very much work. And I can then go back to being a doctor.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Keeping It Real Estate Show. My name is Dan Brisse. Today, we have an amazing guest, Dan Albershardt. Dr. Albershardt is a practicing anesthesiologist and Director of Anesthesia Services at Peri-Operative Surgery, a multi-specialty practice in Olympia, Washington. He focuses on regional anesthesia, also known as nerve blocks. He also has a Peri-Operative Surgical Home and optimizes the outpatient surgical experience. He has participated in multifamily real estate as a limited partner in over 1,000 doors across multiple states, along with hundreds of doors of over multiple hotels and resorts. Daniel, with that, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be on you guys' show. So thank you very much for having me on here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. We know Dan from investing in real estate in multifamily, but if you want to first, let's just give a little background on the medical field for any of the listeners out there.
So obviously, I'm a physician, so I'm a practicing anesthesiologist, which means I went through medical school, did a formal training in anesthesiology, and I practiced as a physician in Olympia, where I actually put people asleep for surgery. The surgeons actually perform the surgery. I keep you safe for surgery and keep you asleep for the surgery itself. And it's a very taxing job. It's something where I spend a lot of time doing that. I spend a lot of time doing education. There's a lot of education. There's a lot of continuing education. I take courses every year and do a lot of work to maintain that. And it's frankly, it's very, very taxing. And so one of the things I looked into for the real estate was so that I could have something to augment my income, to something where I could actually have something on the side to help me out. Because let's say I only want to go 4 days a week. I mean, I love my job. I love what I do. But, the requirements of anesthesia is actually very, very intensive. It's very, very time intensive. And so I was looking for something that was on the side that could say, what can I do to go 4 days a week or 3 days a week and still maintain my income so I can have more of the enjoyment of what I do?
Gotcha. A couple quick side questions aren't really related too much to real estate, but how many years of schooling did it take to get to where you are to be a practicing anesthesiologist?
Oh yeah.
After high school, right? I mean,
yeah. So you finish high school, you get that done, you go to college, you get your 4-year degree, and then you go to medical school, which is another 4-year degree. For me, it was 5 years because I took a year to do research in anesthesia. I did some mathematical research and did that on the side for fun. And then you go to residency, and my residency training is 4 years long. So it's an internship plus 3 years of specialized training. And then when you get done with that, you go out into private practice. But in the first, the first year or so after joining private practice, you have to take your board exam. So there's a written board exam and there's an oral board exam that you have to take. And then once you pass your board examinations and you're board certified, you've made it, right? Well, then I have maintenance of certification. And so then I go through education trainings every year. I go to, conferences and CMEs, and I take, question banks and stuff like that. And I also have to take a maintenance of certification, which is testing every 3 months or so to maintain that. Yeah. So it's a lot. It's a lot.
I mean, so some quick math. I mean, you're talking 13 to 15 years of further education to get to the point where you're practicing.
Yeah. Like it depends on the specialty. Some specialties are even longer. Like neurosurgery is 7 years of residency training. Plus sometimes I'll do 2 years of research. So it can be quite long.
And I just have to ask, when you were younger, what made you want to get into the medical field? You're like, oh man, did the idea of that much college scare you, or you're just like, sweet, let's go. This is what I want to do.
I was pretty driven, in the sense that, I compare it to athletes in the sense that, I'm not an athlete. I'm not exactly the best, like physically fit dude to go and do all that kind of stuff. But the mentality is very similar in the sense that you have to be extremely, extremely driven. And I got into it in pre-hospital care. I was a fireman and first responder. And so, out there working on the bus, scraping people off the pavement, doing that kind of stuff. And it just wasn't satisfying for me because I didn't, for me, other people, it was very satisfying, but for me particularly, I didn't like that I didn't have like all of the medical knowledge of what's going on. I had a general idea, like, hey, put a bandage on it, get him into the hospital, get it going, save the life, get him into the hospital, and they'll take care of it. I never liked handing it off to the hospital. I didn't like the fact that then they went to the hospital where they got a higher level of care, and I wanted to be in that higher level of care. And so I knew that it was a lot of work. I knew that it was something where I had to dedicate like decades of time to do this. And it was one of those things where it's like, well, if this is what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna have to jump in, both feet, go hard and go fast. And I think that's actually kind of an advantage. Now that I'm learning more about business type stuff, that's an advantage to be able to take action, do something. And that's what I had to do.
Yeah, what an extreme confidence booster to get through that. I mean, I know there's a lot of folks who probably realize once they get into it, it's just too much. I can't get there. And so you clearly were mentally ripped. I think about if you're studying for that many years on one topic, how deep it must go. So congrats on that. And I'm looking at you right now, Daniel, you're pretty young. How many years have you been practicing?
I think it's about 8 years or so now, 7 or 8 years now, in that range.
Okay, gotcha. So 8 years practicing, and you were looking for something to do on the side. So basically, you're now through your doctorate, you're practicing, you've got good income, and you're realizing, what, I got to find a place to put the money. What was the reasoning for looking for it?
I went out looking for it because the idea is that there is, especially in anesthesia, I don't bring patients to the hospital. I make the hospital and clinics money by the back end, by basically saving money and getting a better patient experience and all the things that are intangibles. But when it comes to the actual accounting and those kind of things, I don't bring top line income in. I don't bring in patients. So therefore, I realized that my job is always at risk if someone gets an idea that they can get somebody else, who comes in from another state or somewhere else that they think can do it better, whether or not they're right. I happen to be out of a job because those people think that they can get it done. And it takes 3 to 6 months there's a lot of onboarding for physicians. There's a lot of things in the background where you have to get, credentialed and onboard and then start in this. And it can take a while. You can be out of an income for at least 3 to 6 months. And so, it always struck me that, hey, look, I'm doing pretty well. I'm making decent money. But tomorrow they could come in and say, hey, look, we found somebody else, and they may be wrong. They may be wrong. It may turn out in a year or two that they were absolutely wrong, but I'm out of a job. I need to go find it, and I could always get, fired tomorrow. And so I need another income stream. I need something else to help me out. And I said, okay, well, why don't I try and squirrel away and sock away as much money as I can into this, live more humbly, like don't buy the big house, don't buy the fancy stuff, and try and put more stuff into these investments so I can then diversify and make sure that if for some reason they come in and do that, I have something that I can, that will support me on those months off, rather than just saying, have a rainy day fund. Yeah. Well, then I use the rainy day fund. What happens next? What's next? Yeah. And that's the problem.
Yeah. So really it was for security and just making sure that what you were doing had a backup plan. So from there, you've been in multiple investments, but one of the main asset classes you invest in is multifamily real estate. Yeah. Right. What was it when you were looking for places to park cash? What was it about multifamily real estate that struck you as a good place or a safe place to start putting money?
Well, as you know, like, me, Dan, that I kind of and also I think I've noticed this in a lot of other physicians. They tend to be researchers on, we get the Colby assessment or other assessments, and they have to have some level of researcher in them because they're driven and they like to learn. They like to find out what's going on and figure this stuff out. And so, of course, I researched a bunch of stuff. And one of the things is that, oh, well, you should go and buy, single family homes. The problem is that I didn't like that. It works for other people, but it didn't work for me because I don't have any time. I have spent, 10, 15 years, learning my craft, learning my trade, learning how to do what I do. And I should be spending my time doing what I do, and then let somebody else who's an expert in, real estate or whatever it is, do that. And so that actually really limited it down to where I didn't want to be an active participant. I wanted to take and leverage my expertise, and that would make me money, and then leverage someone else's expertise to then have them do their zone of genius to then make me money in the end, and do that. So I wanted to be a limited partner. I did not want to be an active participant. I wanted to be able to, write the check and have someone else that I know, like, and trust go and take care of the asset, take care of the things, and they send me a check back. And I don't really have to do very much. I have to do a lot to vet all of the providers, all of the people that I partner with. But once that's done and I figure out that I know, like, and trust them, and you vet the deal, then it's really kind of hands off at that point. It's not as much, you're kind of managing stuff, but it's not very much work. And I can then go back to being a doctor. And that
Yeah.
narrowed it down from, like, there is oil and gas and those kind of things where oil and gas is really good for W-2 earners. But at the time, I didn't know very many people in the oil and gas space. It was difficult for me to find contacts that I know, liked, and trust. Other people may have been able to do that well. I wasn't able to do it very well, to find lots of people that I could know, like, and trust. And also, the oil and gas was one of those things where I didn't understand the stability as well. I didn't understand as much about it. But then multifamily, I could understand it was tangible, it was right there. And the history of it, I could also, when I researched it, I could get a lot of information. And when I talked to some providers, they were able to give me information from, like, CoStar and other places where I could get information, historical information, where things are at, and be able to get a better picture of where things are going to go. And so it made it as a very stable asset class, because I needed to have something that was extremely stable for that income stream in that sense. And the cherry on top was, of course, was it the Section 269, I think is what it is, for the IRS code for passive depreciation, for passive losses, and those kind of things, how depreciation can be used, for, because I'm never going to be a real estate professional. That's the thing we talk about. We hear that on podcasts all the time about, hey, I'm going to be a real estate professional so I can then take the depreciation against my active income. I'm never going to do that. But there are ways in which the passive investor can get depreciation off of other income and be able to do that. So the other ways in which I could invest in things that, stocks and bonds and stuff like that, that's all going to be taxed like crazy. I'm at the top of the tax income bracket. And I'm not going to get all the benefits that are going on there. So find something that gives me a heck of a lot of tax benefits. And that narrowed it down to pretty much, like I said, oil and gas and multifamily real estate. And I just like multifamily real estate better. I could understand it better.
Yeah. So let's just touch on, you hit a lot of points there. I just want to make sure listeners, all good. Our listeners are following along. When he says he didn't want to be active, meaning he didn't want to be the one doing daily asset management, working with the property managers, implementing the business plan. Dan wanted to come along, a group of investors, park his cash and receive a monthly update, and let the general partners, so you got the general partners and the limited partners, let the general partners manage the deal and execute on the business plan and exit the deal, giving investors capital back. So I just want to make sure, limited partner means you're a passive investor, you're an owner in the deal, you're an owner of the LLC, you're right alongside, you just aren't actively doing it. It allows you to continue to focus on what you do, which is being a doctor, do what you do best.
Do what I do best.
Yeah, work with people in their zone of genius. I love the way you put that. That's exactly how it should be. The folks that are running these deals should be obsessively focused on how can we do it better? How can we find the best deals? What relationships do we need to have? What kind of debt structures do we need to have? What's coming in the economy? How do you protect the capital? And it's really difficult, I think, to run two careers, which I did. I had a snowboarding career and I was investing in multifamily on the side. Here I'm a snowboarder during the day, and then at night I'm trying to manage my 9-unit property. It's not that easy. Right? There's a lot going on. So it's nice to have someone on your team that can handle it for you. The other piece I want to talk a little bit about too, Dan, you touched on it, is the depreciation losses. You're not a real estate professional, but you can still receive some of the losses. How did you learn about that? How did you find that out? Who did you find someone on a team, or did you do your own research, or how did you figure that out?
Oh, that'll show how nerdy I am. One thing to talk about, like when you're talking about the team and those things in the zone of genius, I was thinking as a corollary for folks who are in the biz, I'm a physician, I'm an anesthesiologist, but if I have a question about cardiology, I have a question about oncology, I call an oncologist. I call somebody else who's their zone of genius is that. In this case, I call in on multifamily genius and I say, hey, you're a specialist in that. I make a consult. So that's why I do that stuff there. The way in which I found this kind of the how to use depreciation was, honestly, it was kind of twofold. One was that I went through a coaching program, which I think, I went through a training program for my anesthesia. So I went through a coaching program about, how to understand money and how to understand taxes and making taxes more efficient for me in that sense. And so, the folks at ProVision were really great. They helped me out a lot, and I learned a ton from that program. And some of the stuff they were talking about, they educated me about, depreciation and how to use it. They gave me this little nugget saying, hey, you can, here's some of this. Hey, there's some of this. And they'd give out these little, how you give us these little nuggets, and they just stick with you. And it stuck with me. So then I was like, okay, this can't be right. You can't do this. Like this can't work this way, can it? And really? And then how come I'm not hearing this on any podcast? How come no one's talking about this? How come it's even when you have, places where they have physicians, kind of deal sponsors who want to have physicians, they will go after and try and market towards physicians, aren't talking about this very much. So therefore, then I was like, okay, either my tax strategists are excellent and they're amazing and they know everything that's going on and everybody else isn't talking about it, or I misunderstood it. And so then I went back to the actual IRS code and I read it and I read the code, and turns out that the tax strategists were really freaking smart, and it was really nice. And so I was stupid and I went and read the code and I misunderstood it, and I went and called him and I said, hey Tim, like what do I do here? Like, is this really right? Is this really how it works? And he's like, yeah, that's what I told you last time. I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah. And so that's kind of where it went down.
Yeah, so that's a great story. I don't know if I've ever heard of someone checking the tax code and reading it. That's when you know you've got someone unique. That's cool. I love that story, dude. Really cool, Dan. Yeah, so what he's talking about, you guys, is not all CPAs are created equal. You're going to get different advice from different CPAs. Some know the tax law at a deeper level, just like anything in life. Some are more practiced, some are less practiced, some are superior to others. I mean, that's just the way it is. So as you're looking for a team member to help you with your taxes, do some research, pick up some great books. How did you come across Provision? That's the company you're with, Provision, correct?
Yeah, Provision. Yeah. So it was where, again, the idea of consulting and when I have a question for, like I said, if I have a surgical question, I consult my surgical colleagues, I consult somebody else. And so as I was starting to learn about some of these things in business, I got to know somebody that I know I can trust, and he was, killing it in business and doing well. And I said, hey, look, this is the problem that I have. And I was asking basically for a consult. I said, where do I go? I don't want just this, frankly, sorry for, some of the CPAs out there, ones I had experience with, was just kind of like, it was tax returns. I'm like, I don't want tax returns. I want tax strategy. I want to figure out how to, I don't want to say beat the system, but use the system the most efficiently way possible and do the most efficient thing. Cause that's what the people who are, centimillionaires, they do it well. So who do they use? Who are they going to use to get this kind of stuff? Cause, well, I'm not a centimillionaire, but I wouldn't mind if I was, and I'd like to use the same strategy, same people.
Yeah.
And so I contacted that person.
If you're listening and you want an introduction to Provision, don't be shy. Reach out to us. We actually work with Provision as well. If Daniel has time, great. If not, but reach out to me, reach out to Mike, and we can make an introduction so you can interview him and have a consultation with him and see if it's a good fit for you. And you do your own research and then you decide. I think that's the thing Daniel's saying here is he did his research. He got a contact from someone who he saw had great results, and he went and did his interview. And that's exactly how I found Provision as well. Did some research, heard some great results, flew in, met him, and decided, hey, this seems like a good company for me. And I've been with them now for 12 years, 11 years, a long time. So that's great. So they help you massively with your tax every year, your tax problem. Basically, you're investing in real estate passively with sponsors like and trust. You're putting your money to work. You continue to work on your practice, and then tax season comes, your CPA helps you dial that in. Did I follow that right?
Yeah. They dial it in for me. It's, again, if I have a tax problem or a question, I just consult my experts and say, hey, what do I do here? And they help me out. It's fabulous. I don't worry about it.
And how has investing, as a passive investor, changed your financial future as far as passive losses and depreciation? I mean, has it helped you pay less in tax legally, or what have been the benefits?
Well, I mean, the benefits have been great for, I'd say, almost in two ways. One is that, hey, look, I'm getting some passive income. I'm getting, when deals go full cycle and they get sold, you get a bump in income from that as well. And that stability from there allows me to then pursue more of my dreams in anesthesia, and that I don't feel as much like I'm a slave to the job in that sense, that it's never the job's fault. It's my fault that I feel that way. And so I needed to change things, and I changed it to where now I'm able to pursue more of the things I super love in anesthesia. I love my regional anesthesia. I love peripheral nerve blocks. I was able to change one job to another where I'm doing like last year did 1,000 peripheral nerve blocks, which, for the anesthesiologists out there, they know that's a lot of blocks. That's a lot of peripheral nerve blocks. And I got to do what I love. And now I'm transitioning again. I'm at Peri-Operative Surgery. We get to do a lot of blocks there. I get to do a lot of things. I'm doing what I really, really love. And because everyone talks about doing this passive income to be able to retire, I don't want to retire. I want to have a really, really nice life. And it's changed it for me, the ability to have that really, really nice life.
So you were talking about section 269 of the tax code. Can you share a little bit more what that is?
Oh, you know what, Dan, I misspoke. Like I said, that's why I'm a physician and not a tax guy. I misspoke. It's section 469. I believe it's subsection G as in George, if I remember right. But the idea is that, in that section, it talks about disposing of an asset, because if you buy your multifamily real estate, you get depreciation. It causes passive losses. Those passive losses sit there for an LP. I can't use them except for on the rental income. It comes in every month. And then when and that offsets the income. Well, it just sits there for years and years and years. But when you sell the asset, that's the key thing for this special idea, is that when it gets sold, the income that I've accumulated, I have to pay depreciation recapture, which again is at a lower interest rate. But what happens to the rest of those passive losses? My understanding is that all those passive losses don't just disappear; they get unlocked from from only being used on passive losses, or from passive income, I should say, because previously they're locked on passive income. Now it can be used for any kind of income. And so you have to actually dispose of the entirety of the asset. You can't just sell one part of it or be one person as a part of this thing. It's basically the GP, you as the LPs, everybody, we all dispose this asset completely. Like I said, I'm not a tax person. My understanding is limited, but you dispose entirely of the asset. It's gone. It's sold. It's out of your hands. Well, now all those passive losses can be applied to any kind of income, which for a W-2 earner is pretty impressive. I can apply it to my W-2 income.
Yeah. So if I understand you correctly, you have these losses from depreciation that sit there. Once you sell the property, it unlocks them. And now those depreciation losses can be used to offset your W-2 income.
Yeah, there's some nuances, here and there, this and that. Obviously, talk to your tax provider, those kind of things. But yeah, it can be applied to other types of income, which is pretty powerful for us.
Check with your CPA, ladies and gentlemen. Bring this up. I mean, if you're a doctor, bring it up and get their legal advice on what they think. And if you don't hear the answer that Daniel kind of described here that we're talking about, maybe get a second opinion and just check, see what else you can find. So let's just say someone's looking to, get into multifamily investing passively. How did you go about getting into and meeting people? What did you do to get to a position where you're comfortable giving and investing? I shouldn't say giving people money, because you're investing your money into a business. How did you get to that point of feeling comfortable?
I had to meet them. I had to go and meet them and shake their hand and get to know them. And that's me. I'm obviously a heck of a researcher. I took courses. I paid a lot of money to take courses. I went through, a multifamily investment course that was designed for general partners, for actual active people who are in the biz doing that stuff. I took a similar class, not the same work that they did, but I went to some of the classes and learned a lot of the similar things. I'm not nearly to their level, but kind of the 101 instead of the 401 class, to learn about that stuff. And therefore then I met people who were in the programs, who were there, and getting to know that ecosystem and go and talk to them. And then frankly, once you get to know the people, it was doing a trial of investing, because people can talk a big game, but then until you actually write them a check, then it changes. And how do people follow through? Because people talk a big game and they talk all this kind of stuff, but then once you write the check, they don't know you anymore. Then you test them. And so then there was the first phase of getting to know them and then saying, okay, they're worth investing in. And then the next phase was, hey, try them out and see what happens. Do a test with a little bit of money and figure out if they're good, and then invest the larger amounts of money. Because I needed someone to where I'm not going to call it, like, I don't call the GPs every day. I don't call them like almost ever. But when I do have a question, I like to be able to write an email. You don't have to email me back the same day, like within a week or two, but just, hey, talk to me, and tell me what's going on and communicate and tell me where we're at. And if the deal is doing well or if the deal's not doing well, and just talk to me and, keep me up to date. you know?
Yeah, great basic information. Get around the folks that are buying the deals and that have experience and a track record, and then get to know them. Make sure that there's some synergy, some compatibility. What's the track record like? Can they share these questions with you? How much are they investing in these deals?
Yeah.
What kind of skin in the game do they have if things don't go well for them? So those are really great questions. What do you think separates good general partners in great returns compared to, say, an average sponsor or an average deal?
Honestly, I think it's different because I'm from an LP perspective, but I think it's underwriting is one, and the other one is follow through. Uh,
Mhm.
a lot of times after seeing a number of deals out there, I review far larger amount, like numbers of deals that I don't invest in, and I invest in a few. And I'm noticing that I tend to invest with similar people over and over and over again because of the philosophies that they have when they do the underwriting for a deal, when they pencil out the deal, like to say, hey, look, this is what we're going to do, and we need to pencil out to see if this business plan is going to be real. They Are they conservative or not? And if everybody says they're conservative, everybody says they've done pressure tests, everybody says they're conservative, everybody says this stuff, but you kind of have to go and look at their numbers yourself and say, especially on the first, when you're first getting to know somebody, I rewrite their numbers. I go recalculate their numbers to see where is this at, and does it actually pencil out what they say is happening is actually going to happen, and does this actually work? It's not like I'm going into super lots of detail. We're talking like napkin math. It's not exactly differential equations by any stretch, but it's at least kind of redo a little bit to make sure they're telling the truth in that sense, that it truly is conservative. And because then no matter what, we're going to end up happy, in that sense by the end. And the other one is follow through, because like I said, it frustrates me to no end when all they want is a check, and that's all they're interested in is acquisition, disposition, acquisition, acquisition, acquisition. And that's all I can get a phone call about. That's all I can talk to. And if it's just, hey, look, I happen to be in town, I'm flying in, in like a month or something like that. Can we schedule like a lunch meeting? I'll buy lunch. Let's go. And being able to do that kind of stuff and meet them and talk to them and say, hey, look, this is where we're at. Or frankly, if I look at a deal and say, hey, what's the actual goal for this deal? Are you really banking on appreciation? Are you banking on a heavy lift for a value add and forced appreciation? Or your market cap, like where do you see the market cap going? And because every deal is different, and I think a GP should be honest enough to tell me, look, this deal is basing it on some level of appreciation, that the market cap is going to get better, and that's what we're focusing on. And just be honest with me.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
And if you guys don't understand everything Dan's talking about here,
Sorry.
it's okay. There's a lot he's running over, but really at the end of the day, it's just start learning about it and maybe reach out to some other physicians that or maybe someone can reach out to Daniel and just ask, hey, how did you go about doing this? Can I have a conversation with you for 15 minutes? Maybe you're willing to take a call or two, Dan, just in case there are a few folks. Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, he talks about underwriting and follow through. Underwriting is just what you're projecting based off of your debt, your income, expenses, what the reversion cap rate is going to be. Basically, when you sell the deal, what kind of a cap rate will you be at? And it'll affect your value tremendously. And getting to know the market and sub-market a little bit and getting to know what's likely coming will help tremendously in helping you make investment decisions. But really getting to know those deal sponsors is key. And then follow through. I couldn't agree more. I mean, once you take over the deal, you close on the deal. That's just when the work begins.
Yeah.
You've got this business plan to implement. You've got monthly updates. You're going to have challenges. There's going to be setbacks. It's guaranteed. There is nothing that we've never bought a property, just went sailed to the moon. Like it was up and back and up and back, and the market's shifting. I mean, it's a dynamic time. It's a challenging time. So I think those are really great. What are a couple of the biggest lessons you've learned in your financial journey, I guess? Anything, mindset, business, life, anything that really stands out to you that kind of separates you?
I think, I think I'm pretty average in that sense. I don't know that there's much that separates me in general, but I'm pretty average. But I think that one of the things for me in my journey that I think that today me would have a different view than the me starting out kind of thing, like how have I grown, was changing my mindset about, the dream line, in the sense that, there's the timeline, the dream line. Hey, how you accomplish your dream? What is your dream? The why hasn't changed. The what and the why hasn't changed, but the idea of, of where I'm going with this investing has changed a little bit. One of them was like, I looked at where I was at, and I was, had my unhappiness and this and that and how things were going. And like I said, it was my problem, and not the job's problem, it was my problem. And then, um, you know, I was looking at this idea to say, hey, I can retire. Like if I walk in one day, that whole like, I can walk in, drop the mic and say, I quit, and for physicians, you don't quit today, you quit over like 6 months, but, or 3 months,
Yeah.
however long it's months long to quit. But, I could say, walk in one day, and be like, I quit, and I could retire and just sit on a beach and do nothing. And, that was kind of the goal, is to be able to have that ability. And then as I got through the program and going through this stuff and going and starting to do the deal, starting to see this stuff work, and the engine, as I call it, that's what I call as the engine, is that this is an engine. Once you get it rolling, it just keeps getting bigger, and the locomotive keeps going, the train keeps getting bigger and bigger and going further places. I started noticing that my why, not my why, but my what changed a little bit, to where I was saying, I want to have the life that I want to have. I don't want to retire. I don't actually want to quit what I do. I love what I do. And because I had the option, I could be like, well, I could quit and go do something else, or do something this and that. And I actually found that I've spent, X number of years doing this. I actually really like it. Well, then if I'm getting burnt out, well, then I should take a job or do what I do that's going to be, um, less taxing on these things, in the sense that I have this ability to pursue, quote unquote, pursue my dreams, and that I can go and do what I want to do. And what I found is I'm actually working harder than I did back then. I actually work longer hours. I work all the time, and I'm doing more stuff, but I enjoy it. And I think that was a very different thing. Is that before, when somebody was telling me I had to go do it, it felt like I had, a whip that was saying, "Ha, go this," and, now it's that I'm driving myself. I'm telling myself I want to go do this. I am choosing to go work hard. I am choosing to work all this time, do all these things. And, like I said, it allows me to do all these cool things, do research, do partnerships, do business, do all these things, and help a lot more people, and get more exposure, and do more things, and do bigger and, frankly, more amazing things that I wouldn't have been able to do.
And
And that to me is retirement.
yeah, do you think the love for the job came back because you had the ability to scale back a little
Yeah.
bit and not
Yeah.
be there as much? Okay, so that's how that happened. That transition kind of changed for you in your mind.
Yeah, because I started, I started not hating the job, but I was just like, oh, oh man, I used to love this, and it's like, oh, but I have to, oh, but because I was taking a lot of vacation. I would take, I was taking, 12 weeks of vacation a year, and still wanting more, which that was a
Wow.
sign to me, saying, if I'm taking 12 weeks off and I want more, then I really don't like this very much anymore. And now I'm lucky if I take 1 week of vacation, a year, because I'm loving what I do. I found out the things I really don't like, I don't do them anymore. I don't get paid as much, because generally the stuff that, that everybody hates doing, you get paid for that. So I decided I was going to take a pay cut, to not have to do the stuff that I really personally don't enjoy.
Wow.
And, again, having the stuff on the side helped out in a sense. It helped me out to make that transition. And, then with that, I'm able to focus on the things I like to do. And then my enjoyment came back, and I looked back, and I'm like, why am I so busy? And I'm like, but I'm not unhappy. I'm waking up like I want to go do this, and I want to go do more. And when people are asking me to do more work, I'm the first to say yes. And so then, before I was worried I'm saying yes too much, and now I'm saying yes too much just because I don't have enough time, not because I don't want to do it, you know?
Wow. Yeah, Dan, I mean, before you said I'm average, and I would say you're not very average, in the sense that, you live below your means enough to invest your cash to try to create future freedom. You took a pay cut, like, I'm not happy this. What do I need to do to make
Yeah.
myself happy? I'm going to take a pay cut and do the things I like to do. And then, it just allowed you to fall back and kind of love with your job, which is such a unique thing to hear. So congratulations on that. You said Dreamline. What is Dreamline?
That's a thing that the provision folks had for me, that there's the timeline and the dream lines, the time to accomplish the dream, and how, if you have your why of why you're doing this, and what your goal is going to be, and how many years is it going to take to get there. And basically it's an idea of, commitment, buckling down, and discipline kind of stuff, which I don't think a lot of physicians have too much trouble with discipline, in the sense that, they went through a lot of rigors, they went through training, that kind of stuff. And so, it was kind of the thing where you say, this is the dream, this is where I'm going to go. And that whenever I'm, in the middle of it and it looks dark, right, you can always look back to it and say, hey, this is where I'm at, this is where I'm going. And also in the same way, now that I've been doing it, for enough years, I can then look back and say, wow, this is where I was and this is where I am and how far have we come. And that's kind of the idea.
I love it.
I
I love that. And what I also love is I heard you say that Provision, your CPA firm, helped you set up a Dreamline. Is that right?
Yeah. That was actually one of my first coaches. Yeah.
So that's a unique experience with a CPA that not all CPA firms will offer is where are you now? Where do you want to be in 5 or 10 years? And how will we pretty much guarantee, or as close to guarantee as possible, that you'll be there if you can put X amount of dollars into these types of investments? So I remember when I went through that with them as well. And I remember being pretty impressed that they were thinking, hey, how can we help you fully transition out of your snowboarding career and into your next, full-time real estate investing career? So fantastic stuff. I have one other question here as far as your favorite book or podcast. Do you have any recommendations for our listeners on that?
Oh, well, of course, it's the Keeping It Real Estate podcast. I mean, come on,
That's
right?
That's right.
Well, we can't choose that. That would be too much right there. We can't choose that.
Right.
So, the favorite book. I mean, that one's tough. I mean, obviously, everyone's going to say like the Robert Kiyosaki book and those kind of things. That's a great book. But honestly, I didn't like the book as much when I read it, but I find I implement it all the time, which is why I recommend it. Is the 80-20 rule. Is that, that when I read it, I kept going, yeah. Oh yeah. Like I knew what was going on when I really didn't. And, but the idea of the 80-20 rule and focusing on the things I do best and the things that get me the most out of what I do. And then if I can outsource the rest, outsource it. If I have to, then what can I do to get rid of that stuff out of my life and really focus on that 20% that gives me the most enjoyment. And I find I implement that a lot more than I like to admit, in the sense that it was a really, really good book.
I love it.
I was one of those bad readers that, I'm reading it and and saying, oh, I know this already when I didn't, that would be my book recommendation is that one probably changed a lot for me.
Awesome. I love it. What goals, any big goals you have for 2023 that you set for yourself that you want to share?
Oh my goodness. There's a lot. I'm venturing out more to research, doing more research things and partnering with the industry and trying to do those kind of things, do more stuff for pain and acute pain, because I do a lot of acute pain stuff, and try to do more. Obviously there's more procedures, there's more stuff that I can do, but then that limits things to, it's just me. And I'm finding that my time is limited. And so I'm trying to focus more on education and more of trying to I don't want to say train, because all of my colleagues are well trained. It's not like that. It's that, hey, look, what are the little nuggets that I've seen that do this stuff, and teach other people all about, regional anesthesia and these kind of things, to show them the little nuggets I've learned along the way. And what happens is they end up seeing nuggets too, and they teach me. So I learn more as well. So I think it's a two-way street, but also to kind of share to the other folks to really get people the passion about regional anesthesia.
Love it. Love it, Dan. Well, we want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. If our listeners wanted to get in contact with you, what would be the best way for them to reach you?
Oh, you guys can always email me and that kind of stuff. So email is daniel.albershardt@gmail.com. So DANIEL.AL, B as in boy, ERSHAR, D as in dog, T as in Tom, @gmail.com. And that's my personal email. You can email me and, I'll read it. And if the people had like questions or something like that, we can set up a call and a chat with folks. Just happy to help anybody out.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for listening. We hope you gained some value and insight listening to this episode. If you have any questions or you want to learn more about investing with us or passive investing in general, click the link below to reach out to us. And thank you everyone again. We'll see you next week on another episode of the Keeping It Real Estate Show.